had no idea what I was doing most of the time, right? Like most people claim that they do, but genuinely I didn't. And yeah, you make it up, hope something goes right. And if it does, do more of that. If it doesn't, pivot as quickly and as hard as possible. That was kind of the story of my 10 years. But the beauty for me, which I think was a lot, helped me so much, was I was in AE first, which meant that I learned how to sell deals externally, because a ton of SDR leadership is actually just selling deals internally, getting people to buy into you and what you need to make your team successful. I'd rather work with someone who's got an amazing product who doesn't know how to sell it than someone who has a bad product but knows how to sell it. From a leadership perspective, it's like I think SDR leaders they've never been under as much pressure as they are under now. The interesting thing is the profile of SDR leader has still not actually shifted that much to match some of those new requirements. So you just have junior folks or junior leaders typically in much higher pressure situations with lots more expected from them than say 2-3 years ago. What makes the top performers isn't a few frameworks, it's nuances that they understand around deal management and business acumen and deal control and stuff like that, which in lots of cases are actually quite unteachable in many ways. It's what makes them and unique. All I want is 50 students that I can do a really good job with over the course of a year, get promoted, help them make each of them six figures and be on that track. And that's a job well done, right? I'd rather do that than have 500 customers where no one makes it. The numbers are pretty dramatic, but it's like 50+% of SDRs that get promoted to AE roles fail in their first 12 months. 80% plus have left that particular role within 2 years. It doesn't look like a good investment from most companies when they do that. I think one of the best beauties that one of the things that people aren't taught in their 20s nowadays is your 20s are to work out where you want to spend your 30s and 40s and 50s. But it's like the actual core definition of entrepreneurship is someone who is okay with taking significantly more financial risk than your average human being. Right? But by doing that, you are quite literally saying or communicating you are not normal and you're okay with doing stuff that is riskier, and with that comes more extremes of highs and lows and all of that sort of stuff.
Welcome back to Prospecting Pros, and on today's show we have Chris Ritson. Welcome to the show.
Hey man, yeah, thanks.
Did I pronounce that correctly?
Happy to be here. Yeah, you did. One of the few people actually that does get it right, or has got it right. So yeah, no, happy to be here. Excited to talk a little bit more about prospecting 2026.
Yeah.
Not an easy task.
So Chris and I are just meeting now on this call, but I've been seeing him all over LinkedIn. I get his newsletter talking about SDRs, and of course, this is the space we're in too. So I figured he'd be a great guest to have on. Chris, what I like to do is start every show by walking through some of your career. Like, how did you can skip over some of the different roles, but how did you get to where you are today? Like, where did you start, and walk us through some of the roles and tell us what you're doing today.
Today I'm a founder, right? Ultimately of a couple of different businesses. My primary business is a coaching and training business. So I work with SDR leaders. I work with SDRs, and the main objective really is just help them be a little bit better in their day-to-day roles. I think I see coaches on LinkedIn all the time and whatever social media channels. Like, I think they kind of try and steal the limelight from all the hard work that reps and leaders actually do. My view really is like, if I can be 1% of that journey, then that's kind of good enough for me, right? So that's really what I do. It's ultimately about, I really enjoy working with people who want to achieve high performance, rather than mediocre results, etc. I just get more kicks from working with people who are super ambitious and want to take their game to the next level, whether that's in SDR leadership or in SDR. And that's, I guess, kind of why like I have a couple of different programs that I run at the moment. So like the SDR leader mentorship piece and boot camps that I run, but also SDR to AE. It's normally people who are kind of chomping at the bit. They've done really, really well, but they just don't quite know how to get to that next level or that next gear in their career. That's really where I would say I come in. Before that, I was an SDR leader for like 10 years, built teams from like 1 to 50 plus SDRs around the world. Had no idea what I was doing most of the time, right? Like most people, I think people claim that they do, but genuinely I didn't. You make it up, hope something goes right. And if it does, do more of that. If it doesn't, pivot as quickly and as hard as possible. That was kind of the story of my 10 years. Lots of pivoting, lots of mistakes, some wins here and there, right? That's actually like what happens. But that's me really. Nowadays running the coaching business as my day job. I'm a dad, is my real job, my first job.
Nice.
I would say as well. So figuring it all out. We'll see how it goes.
I just had my first kid about less than 3 months ago, so I'm learning on the fly. So that's very new. Yeah. How old's yours?
My son is 3 months, and my son's sorry, not 3 months. My son's 3 years. I don't know why I said 3 months. I think it was because you said 3 months. My daughter's going to be 2 in April, and then I have another baby on the way. My third is on the way.
Wow! Congrats.
So they'll be with us hopefully in early June. We'll see how it goes.
That is a full-time job right there. One's already hard enough.
Yeah. The first one's the hardest. It's just adapting, changing your lifestyle, and then you kind of get used to it. And the second one comes along, and people say double trouble. It's like honestly, I don't think it's. I personally, my experience was the first one was the hardest to adapt to because there's so many lifestyle changes. The second one is like your lifestyle's already changed. It's just you're doing more, you're repeating a lot of the things that you've done with the first one. And
that's a good perspective. I could see that.
Yeah. So see how the third one goes. We'll be outnumbered at that point. We'll see. It's kind of like we're building SDR teams, right? And careers, it's like you got to just see how it goes, and then you'll mess it up a lot.
Well, you were talking about, you were managing teams, but it's not, people don't just fall into that by mistake, right? At some point, someone chose you or an opportunity came about that you went from an SDR into management. How did that come about, or what did your potential boss at that time see in you to become an SDR manager at that point?
What did my boss see in me? Well, I think the interesting thing is like I didn't go into SDR management first. So my career journey was I was an SDR, then I was an AE, senior AE, and then I managed AEs. I was an AE leader and head of sales first. Then I got asked to have an AE and an SDR team or teams. And then I realized that I really enjoyed just the SDR stuff. So not just, I love the AE piece too, but I then decided to focus mostly on the SDR and top of funnel piece and being closer to marketing. So that's what led me to running kind of like, I guess, like pure SDR functions, as opposed to primarily an AE function. And that's when I then had like the 3 like senior SDR leader gigs. But actually like the backdrop to that wasn't SDR straight into an SDR manager role. But the beauty for me, which I think was a lot, helped me so much, was I was an AE first, which meant that I learned how to sell deals externally, because a ton of SDR leadership is actually just selling deals internally getting people to buy into you and what you need to make your team successful.
Mm-hmm.
Most SDR leaders, they have no actual full cycle selling experience or selling into senior execs to get large budgets and be responsible for those sorts of things. So I would say that route made it a lot easier for me, to be honest with you. And also running an AE team and running a big quota of millions of pounds a month, the pressure felt a little bit different in SDR in some ways. Also, it was less direct. It's still there massively. I'm not taking it away from, I'll take anything away from that, but it was less direct pressure from like investors and the board ultimately.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense, especially in bigger companies. You're going to need to do that selling internally. If it's a smaller startup, or let's just say 100 people or less, there's probably less of that needed. But I could totally see how that comes full circle, that you were doing the selling already, so then you could apply that when needed to get the resources and on the
Yeah,
SDR front.
I think you'd be surprised, right? Is like if you're in a smaller org, like actually getting budget for things and selling internally is going to be, you're just going to be selling directly to the CEO who's going to control the budget for sales
Yeah.
and the CFO. And that's going to be super hard right now because the smaller the business, the less money you at the moment typically they have because of the macroeconomic pressures. But getting money out of them is going to be even harder. And that's one of the observations that I have with a lot of the SDR leaders that I work with is like them actually getting access to the resource that they need. It's not because they don't need it. It's because they are unable to demonstrate why they need it commercially to
Mm-hmm.
the powers that be. Directly in smaller businesses, they're speaking straight to C-suite. Whereas larger org, you might be speaking to CRL or a VP sales who already controls the budget and feels more of the pipeline trouble. Whereas a CFO, it's like getting it in the neck from every
Yeah,
one business on spend.
that makes sense. In my experience, it's very helpful when, let's just say you're talking to the CEO in this scenario, that the CEO's done selling before, because there are CEOs that are more product driven and they haven't done the selling, in which case they're not going to understand what the SDR team really needs. So I found it really helpful in that scenario. If the CEO has done the selling before, they're going to be much more likely to understand that they need the tools and the resources in order for it to be successful.
I think it's an interesting one. Like they do, yeah, like they do. I still think it's case by case because like you just, I think like they have like some of the sales skills that can be really, really helpful. And I think what we know is technical founders often don't. They typically have a really good product but don't know how to sell it.
Yeah.
But equally, I've seen incredibly gifted technical founders understand that actually, the gap that they have is the sales side of things, and therefore they pour extra and additional resource into it. I think ultimately, like if I had to choose personally, I would rather work, and I have in the past worked with technical founders who have an amazing product, because I'd rather work with someone who's got an amazing product who doesn't know how to sell it than someone who has a bad product but knows how to sell it, because it's easier for me if I've got a good product to take it to market, because it's often will sell, a lot of it will sell itself, so the workload will be often easier. But I totally hear you. I think it's like there's so many compounding factors in terms of like what pressure they're under, how much money they've got available, when if they last
Mm-hmm.
raised, their cash flow, their burn, all that stuff. But I think from a leadership perspective, it's like I think SDR leaders they've never been under as much pressure as they are under now. The interesting thing is the profile of SDR leader has still not actually shifted that much to match some of those new requirements. So you just have junior folks or junior leaders typically in much higher pressure situations with lots more expected from them than say 2-3 years ago. But I think that's sign of the times, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. It is a case by case basis. For us, a lot of companies are coming to us. Tends to be on the smaller side when they're technical founders, because they haven't yet got that sales team in place. And that's where I guess where I'm drawing from experience is you can tell they don't have experience because they're expecting something overnight. and they don't, like, that's just not how sales works, right? It takes a little bit of time to develop, especially if they haven't gone to market. So yeah, but it is a case by case. The best, I think your scenarios, the best case scenarios, they understand they need to focus on the product and away from sales, and they let someone else do that. And that's the perfect scenario where they let somebody else, whoever that may be internally, actually handle that.
Yeah, 100%.
So talk us about the SDR to AE school you have. Walk us through tell the audience a little bit more about what that is. If let's say someone's interested, how do they get involved? Tell us more about what it entails.
Yeah, so I think in terms of what it entails, it's a 1-year program. That 1-year program is what that covers is a host of recorded workshops that people get access to immediately. That's what I would think of more as like your foundational AE skills, someone to actually like understand. That's one of the biggest gaps that people have, right? They jump straight into an AE role. They've watched a few of the top performers do things and they try to replicate them, and miles away from doing that. What makes the top performers isn't a few frameworks, it's nuances that they understand around deal management and business acumen and deal control and stuff like that, which in lots of cases are actually quite unteachable in many ways. It's what makes them and unique. So it's about giving them the frameworks first that they can then go and build their own unique ways of deal control and deal management, etc. upon. So that's like the first part and the first part of the process. The second part of it is it's a year-long mentorship. So, well, year-long program. So every month they'll get access to like community sessions with me and the other students. They'll get access to guest workshops, speakers from that are live from AEs that are performing really well in the industry at the moment. But I think most importantly, what they'll get access to is me, 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, right? Like here on a one-to-one basis on our phone, whether that's voice, in a voice note capacity, dropping me a message, etc. That's why I limit the program so like 50, or the school to like 50 people at one time, so I can actually service them properly. Because the main thing for me is it's not about I'm not trying to scale this. I'm just trying. All I want is 50 students that I can do a really good job with over the course of a year, get promoted, help them make each of them 6 figures, and be on that track. And that's a job well done, right? I'd rather do that than have 500 customers where no one makes it.
And how does it work? Is it like, hey, you need to do a certain amount every month over the course of a year? How are they required to, is a lot of it done on their own time? How does that work?
This episode is sponsored by LevelUp Leads, a B2B sales development and appointment setting agency. Companies always need pipeline, but they oftentimes don't want to hire SDRs internally. The whole process is risky and expensive. You've got hiring costs, onboarding, training, additional spend on your tech stack, a few months to ramp up. And with that being said, SDRs are a high turnover position, and the person you hire might not necessarily work out, so you need to start all over again. That's why companies outsource this. LevelUp Leads allocates a team of people, their tech stack, so you can onboard and launch your campaigns in about a week. They set qualified meetings in your calendar so your team has more selling opportunities. Visit levelupleads.io today to learn more. All right, now back to the show.
I think it's a bit of ultimately, like any learning journey, it's a bit of both, right? Like 90% of what people learn in a job is going to be done on the job. But the other 10% is about controlling what they are given access to based on where they're at right now. If someone's a high performing SDR, it's like the worst thing you can do is go and just give them the most complex, deal cycles to go and cut their teeth on, because it's just going to kill their confidence. What they need is kind of like at school, right? You go from year 5 to year 6, year 6 to year 7, year 7 to year 8, right? Going from SDR to top performing ever AE, it's like going from like kindergarten to all the way to university. It doesn't usually work in that way. We've all seen those 1 or 2 like mastermind kids on TV, right? But that's not the normal process. Like most people go through it from that perspective. So that's what the school's really designed to help people go and achieve, right? Is give them the foundations that they need that are going to help them be successful longer term. So when they are in an A position, they don't get promoted and then get fired after 3 months because they've closed no deals, or they don't, or lose so much confidence that they quit sales forever and start hating it as a career. Right, and we see that a lot, right? The numbers are pretty dramatic, but it's like 50+% of SDRs that get promoted to AE roles fail in their first 12 months. 80% plus have left that particular role within 2 years. It doesn't look like a good investment from most companies when they do that. I think companies have caught on to that fact a lot, and they've stopped promoting SDRs. They've made it a lot harder, but then that causes friction, right? Because they're ambitious. They want to go places.
Yeah, the SDRs don't stay in the role.
Exactly. So then they quit anyway. They quit anyway. So this is like the main thing for me is it's like creating that space for them to learn over a long period of time and have support over a long period of time, rather than the way that I used to run it. It was called the SDR to AE bootcamp, and it's like a 4 or 5 week program of, right, almost like we'll go from here to here in 4 or 5 weeks, and gave them some of the skills. But what I actually found was people wanted to go for a longer period of time, and because the SDR to AE journey, from going from top performing or SDR to top performing AE, doesn't take 4 to 5 weeks. It takes time to get applications out, interviews that you need help with, actually ramping up into the role when you get it, then being consistently successful after that point. So that's why I decided to decrease the amount of people I was working with, but increase the length of time that each person got access to, basically.
Yeah, that makes sense. And you mentioned about people getting promoted from SDR into AE and then failing in a lot of cases, not all, but a lot of cases, SDRs have always been SDRs, or they came out of school or a different industry and they don't have the selling experience. And so it's like putting them into a role they've never done before, right? They didn't, your course would actually train for this, so they have a lot more experience heading into it. But a lot of times SDRs are promoted into the AE role, yet don't have selling skills or haven't done it before. So I think that's one of the challenges why you're going to find that's not working out if they've never actually been trained to do the position.
That's the ultimate thing. But that training, it falls into 2 categories. It's the hard skills that everyone in sales is so obsessed with, but then it's the soft skills that actually make someone successful, in the long term anyway, because you could be the best at discovery in the world, but if you quit after 2 months, then it doesn't matter. Yeah. Right? Yeah. So it's finding this balance with these folks, because they're going into a new environment with new challenges and new pressures and all of that sort of stuff. Like, do they have someone who can help them get through that? That's what a lot of the program's about, and the kind of access here, and why I reduced the number of people that I want to work with, whilst the workshops with the guest speakers and with me, that's about, covers the hard skills side of things. Because there's more to a salesperson than just how good are they at discovery or like sticking to a demo structure. How are they able to turn up and actually perform, like, with all the noise that's around them? And for each one of them, it's going to be pretty different.
So another question that came up, so you're helping SDRs go to AEs. Do you ever have to or do you ever catch an SDR in the sense that maybe they're better off suited to go into management rather than towards an AE? Like, do you ever have to catch somebody and be like, look, based on what I'm seeing, you actually might be better off at management based on X, Y, and Z. Do you ever encounter that?
Yeah, I think you encounter it quite a lot, like a fair amount. You do, but the way that I think about it is it's more about I don't encourage them to go down certain paths. Like myself, I encourage them to work it out for themselves. I think there's actually nothing stronger for someone than making the mistake in the first place. So it's kind of like you can see the mistake coming, and that's fine, and you can say, cool, I think you could go into management. But most people will just say, I'm just going to go and be an AE because that's what I want to do. They need to work it out for themselves. I think the coaching point on it is more, you are the CEO of your own career. Whatever decision you make, the book stops and starts with you. So if you like it in the AE, then great, right? If you don't, then maybe search for something else. And you'll see this with lots of people, right? It's like the teaching really is like work it out along the way. Like just because you were an AE and then you worked out that you wanted to go to management, that for me is a really good thing. You've actually worked out that you've done it before and you don't want to do it. I think one of the best beauties that people, and one of the things that people aren't taught in their 20s nowadays, is your 20s are to work out where you want to spend your 30s and 40s and 50s, not to get to the fucking top by, sorry for swearing, not to get to the top by the time
all good
24, right? Your job is just to work it out a little bit, or have some idea of like, here's 10 things I definitely don't want to do. Whereas in our mind, we've got this kind of like end goal of just like, yeah, I need to be on 6 figures and be like super senior and successful and have like 1 million employees by the time I'm 27, because some random person on Instagram had that and I desire it, basically, right? So like, I think like that's really the core teaching for people, is like each step along the way, have the self-awareness to reflect on what did you like about it, what did you not like about it, and then how can you in your next job do more of the stuff you like and less of the stuff you don't like, and eventually you'll refine this career over when you're 21 to 30, and you'll probably have something that you generally quite like. Whereas what I see with most folks is that they just choose money, they get to 30, they got a massive mortgage, and they hate what they do every day, right? It's like most of my best mates, right? They're like 80% of them, they hate what they do. They can't see a way out of it. That's a collection of bad decisions, right? About, in my mind anyway, right, where they focus just on what pays them the most, not what they love the most. So that's really what helped me, I would say, the most, was after each job that I had, I looked at them and said to myself, okay, like what did I like? What did I didn't like? So like my first job was in a massive corporate. I didn't like working in a big company. So my learning was, but I did like sales. So I went to a startup in sales. That was like the first revolution. The next revolution was, right, well, I like working in sales at a startup specifically selling HR tech. Let's keep doing that, but I don't like being micromanaged, and I don't like working in the office from 7 a.m. till 7 p.m. every day. And maybe find a company that has a bit more balance and a manager that's going to really invest in me. So then the next time when I was interviewing, I was looking at HR tech companies where I really liked the manager. There was a real culture of coaching, and there was also a culture around work-life balance, right? So that I was just working things out a little bit more. The next one was, right, what do I love? Right, well, I like helping people do deals more than I like doing them myself. So actually the route maybe is management and a management role. Okay, well, I remember this one well, was that the manager role paid 12K less than the account exec role. I chose the manager role because I enjoyed it more. Whereas I know for most people would have chosen that AE role because it paid 12K more.
Well, I like when you originally answered that question, was you ultimately let the person to figure out or test it out on their own and let them have their own experience on whether or not the AE makes more sense or the management role makes more sense. I think that's, let them decide. They're the CEO of their career. The reason why I asked, to be honest, is so I have a handful. I have a lot of SDRs in house, and some of them will express that, hey, I want to become the manager. I want to grow. Actually, a lot of people say, I want to grow within the company. I want to be the manager. And I don't tell them necessarily directly, but I'm thinking in my head, like, you'd be much better off just in sales. You don't like helping other people. You like helping yourself. So you should go to sales, so I was interesting. The reason I was asking you is like, how do you navigate that? Because I have a lot of different personalities, and anyone that's run an SDR team, you'll realize they all have different personalities and different pros and cons. And some are meant to be and are really good at management, and others aren't. So it's a tricky thing.
I think it's a really difficult one. One of the exercises that I run with people when they're like thinking about it, or I think that they're wrong, but I want them to self-realize before they even get into it, because it's such a bad decision, is I never tell them, but I'll say, okay, well, look, why don't you go and write down what you like or you think you're going to like about leadership and what you don't think you're going to like about leadership.
That's
and then
smart.
let's sit down and actually run through what leadership looks like. And you can watch some of the things, and you can, you can do some stuff, in a non-leadership full role, but you can actually run some of the things for the next month or a couple of weeks, and let's see how much you actually like those things. Yeah, a lot of the time people will be like, actually, yeah, no, you're right. Like, I really don't want to report the numbers in. I really don't want to have to sit there and do a performance review with one of my friends who's not performing, but then have to go out for lunch with them. And, like the actual reality of stuff. Whereas what people want, and I think, and this is really normal, especially for SDRs, but anyone in the world, is they're motivated by either fear or greed, and they want the greed. The greed is the sexy leadership job title, because leadership is like, I'm in charge of people. I am. The status of that is psychologically incredibly. It gives your ego a lot, right? Doesn't matter how many people you first manage. It could be one, and you're like, I'm a manager. You don't, you never say I'm a manager of one person. You're like, I'm a leader now, right? So like, I think there's that, but then equally you want to get people to understand like the other side of it, which is, okay, well, what are you fearful of? Because all they're seeing in their mind, and it's a very typical human trait, is, and we're all susceptible to it, is like they're just seeing their best case scenario of like who their future person is, VP sales, but they're not seeing VP sales who goes through all this shit to get to overquota. They're seeing VP sales who earns 250 grand a year. That's all they see, right? And it's so normal, but actually what they don't account for is all these like crazy experiences and knockdowns and pressures and sleepless nights and all of that sort of stuff. It's kind of like entrepreneurship for me now. It's like, it sounds really sexy and like, oh, entrepreneur, right, great. I kind of feel weird about the word still, to be honest, but it's like the actual core definition of entrepreneurship is someone who is okay with taking significantly more financial risk than your average human being. Right? But like, by doing that, you are quite literally saying or communicating you are not normal, and you're okay with doing stuff that is riskier, and with that comes more extremes of highs and lows and all of that sort of stuff. Like, can you handle that? I don't know. It definitely, you don't know, do you, until you actually do it. But that's the thing, I think, with SDRs specifically, is they do, because of their lack of actual like life and job experience, they don't know that it's way harder and the trials and tribulations are way more brutal than they actually are. Same with SDR, leadership, all those things.
Yeah, and I think the average VP of sales, I forget the exact tenure, but it's for sure less than 2 years, and I forget the exact amount, but it's like 1.5 years. It's the average, which isn't long.
So, it's wild.
Yeah, and then generally, you mentioned the checklist about what you like, what you don't like. I mean, that just applies to life. I've done that in all sorts of, even when I started the company, I wrote down the pros and cons of why I wanted to do it, why I didn't want to do it, but it really does provide clarity, regardless whether it's work related or not. If you could just get the emotions out of it, write it down on paper, and you could revisit that in a different mindset, it can be really helpful. Chris, thank you so much for coming on and talking a little bit about SDRs and the road to AE. Where can people find you? Where can people learn more? What's the best place to get in touch?
I think, you can find me. LinkedIn's the best place to start, I think, right? Like I post there once a day. It's always for SDRs and SDR leaders. That's the best place to kind of start, I think, in terms of getting to know me a little bit more, getting used to what I talk about or help people with, and then if you want to take it a little bit further, go and download a couple of the resources, 3 playbooks, that sort of stuff, and hopefully that they can help you either book meetings or build an SDR team from scratch, all of that sort of stuff. That's where I'd start.
Thanks for coming on, Chris. I'll put some of that in the show notes. Until next time.
Cool. Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Catch you soon.
Yep.